Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Welcome to today's live stream. It's your host, Cody, Gotham's Caped Crusader, and we're here with our good friend, Samuel Vera of There's an Alien in My Toilet. We're going to be breaking down his latest Kickstarter campaign, what it's like to be an indie comic creator, and so much more. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you doing? And give us a little breakdown about yourself, man.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, Cody. Love what you do. Basically, I'm an independent comic book creator and podcaster. I run a show called Catch the Craze Podcast. We launched it back in early 06. Left for a little bit, came back and relaunched it in 2019. And my current project is There's an Alien in My Toilet, which is now on Kickstarter with 5 days left.
And you guys are killing that goal. I just looked and you already surpassed it.
I want to say thank you for supporting the campaign.
Hey, not a problem. I remember talking to you previously, and I asked you which was your favorite cover, and you said The Matrix. So I was like, you know what? I know which one I'm getting.
There you go. Awesome. So, appreciate you.
Yeah, not a problem, man. What was it like breaking into the indie comic scene when you first started compared to when you came back? Was there any major differences or any hardships that you had to overcome?
Because there were two different decades, they definitely have its own hurdles. I think the first time out, we were naive to the gameplay rules, right, of indie comics. So we just made our own rules. We didn't understand that, you have to walk here or do this. We just created our own rules. We communicated with the media directly. We folded and stapled our own books, with full color gloss. We had big banners, we had stand-up cutouts, we had uniforms, jerseys, we're like a baseball team. I mean, we were just like doing our own thing, and we stood out because of that. At the same token, we made a lot of mistakes, because what do you mean you need an editor? Oh, because we have that misspelled word, we didn't see it, we printed out a few hundred copies. Damn, so
because there's no going back once it's out.
Yes, or why are we doing 14 to 18 shows a year without actually going and vetting those events to see if it's right for us? So sometimes we took a major loss. We would sit there waiting for someone to ask us to dance at a prom, and no one's asking us to dance. So those were some big learning hurdles back then. And then there were no rules, so I was just putting everything on my credit card. It's like, I want shirts, I want this, I want that, right? And so coming back, a lot smarter, but decided to come back in the age of COVID, and that put a damper in my plans, because what it did was, we left podcasting for over 10 years, and I left comics for, George stood in the game. And then coming back, the market's already saturated. When we were there in the early days, we were the source for independence. Now we're 1 in a million, and there's a new generation that nobody knows who Catch the Craze is unless you listen to us back then. So you had to deal with that. Then COVID dropped. Now everybody's podcasting. Your grandmother's podcasting. The baby's coming out with the womb with a mic and a headset. It's like, it's like everybody's got a podcast. Yo. Yes. So I'm like, oh, damn. And when we came back, it was like 48 subscribers to the channel 2 years ago. And so I was like, George, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a slow process. It's going to be a grind. We just have to be consistent. And so the biggest thing for us, and I was always somebody you have to have structure. You have to have some sort of business, rhythm for the show. So, we broke down the beats for the show, and we said, this is how we're going to do it. And then little by little, we added. So like the first year, it was just Catch the Craze. Then I added the Crazy 10 or Less. Then we added the What's in the Box. Now we have the Morning Brew with the Crazy Crew. So we added, then we added the Kickstarter show where we promote the indie campaigns live. And it was just a slow and gradual process. And we never missed. Friday is the consistent show where we have a guest pre-recorded, and we've never missed a show. So, and that's the key. So in 3 years, not one show was missed. Okay. So we're about to celebrate episode 400. Even though there's over 600 videos on the channel, we're about to celebrate episode 400, 400 guests that we've interviewed so far.
That is insane. First and foremost, George is in the chat right now. Welcome to the stream, George. How are you doing, man? The man of the hour, the one that started it all for me, my first interview, which led to this. So let's break a lot of that down. First and foremost, why did you choose to go into this during COVID? Instead of going like before, was it because
we did
everyone
before
was
COVID.
I gotcha.
So we did it in 2019. We did it right before COVID.
Oh,
and
okay.
then, we launched it, and then not only that is like we launched it, and then all of a sudden, and I had plans to come out with the books and all that stuff, and then COVID hit, and then everything.
Okay, I gotcha.
So George was coming. George lives in Yonkers, and I lived in Jersey at the time, and he would drive. We did it once a month. So once a month, we recorded all the pre-recorded episode in 2 days for Catch the Craze, and they were pre-recorded at the time. We weren't doing live. We were doing one monthly live show. Now we're live every week, and then it hit, and then now we were streaming with George being at home and I'm being at where I was, and then I expanded my studio. So we had a garage that was converted into a bonus room that I converted into my new podcast studio, and I designed it to look like Joe Rogan's studio in a sense. And right, so I had the big table down the middle with all the 5 mics and all this big, and then we only did like maybe 3 live episodes with the guys, and then I moved to Texas.
So your podcast has really been super structured and consistent. I remember when I first started like checking you guys out, it reminded me of like a television series, like just seeing how structured and organized. And that's exactly what you want. You want something where your viewers are able to consume your product. Like they're able to be like, okay, it's Friday, it's this time, they're interviewing someone, I need to go check them out. Like that's the goal right there. And you guys are just smashing it, as well as like the social media game. How would you say social media has changed for you guys since you first started this business and to where you are right now? Because you said it was a few decades, so it might have been a little bit harder setting out stuff like newspaper or something.
I said one decade.
Telegram?
Stop fucking up. He just got working with Moses. He's like, I'm carrying tablets. So what happened? No, back then there were forums. So you had like digital webbing. You had all these different forums. That's how you communicated in chat rooms. Now you had Instagram and Twitter and all these other stuff that didn't exist back then. And so I think what happens is, the early bird gets the worm, and everybody is doing the same thing. So how do you rise above that, and how do you be consistent? So I make it a point that every single day I'm posting. Doesn't matter whether it's for Cast the Craze, whether it's for the comic books, whatever it is happening, every day there's something posted. And I try to be present on as many social media platforms out there are. When Geta launched, I joined Lit. I joined there. I'm on Mayway. I'm like 1,000. So I think you have to be relevant, and you got to find ways to attract new audiences, because that's the key to your growth. Because you never know who's going to run into you for the first time and say, "Let me check this out."
That's true. You got that first 15 seconds of like impression, and if you drop it, there's really no coming back from that.
Right. And so I don't believe in that whole, because people say, well, if you post too much, people get annoyed. Look, you have a choice to look at it, not look at it, click through it, not click through it. I have a choice. If you want to, Yes, I have a choice to be consistent or non-consistent. So my choice is to be consistent, and whatever happens in the universe happens, but I think that when we're as small as we are, we have a responsibility to be just as competitive and aggressive with our message to attract an audience, because we didn't create the podcast because of COVID. We've always had Cast the Craze. We just relaunched it. So we were here. We already had a formula. If you ever watch Cast the Craze, we have an intro and outro. We have the pre-show, we have the Get Your Meds segment, we have the interview with the creator. Everything's broken down, segmented, so it gives you a break, the listener, a break in between segments, and that was purposely done. So because we know that everybody's time is precious, and attention is limited, right? So because everyone's pulled in so many different ways, so we try to break it up and keep it flowing, so you're not bored when you're sitting through the show.
Yeah, easy, digestible bites definitely seems the way to go with a lot of stuff. Something that you can listen to on the drive to the store, or while you're like knocking out some work at home or something. And I think you guys really have like solidified that format and crushed it.
Thank you.
But we're diving so hard to the podcast. I gotta ask one more thing, and then we'll dive into the comics, what we're actually here for. How do you find the ability to stay so like organic and not burned out with all that? You said you're up to 400 interviews. That is like outstanding. Like, how do you not burn out on that? How do you keep it going and not like ask the same things over and over? I know for me, I always try to, like, a few hours before the interview, I always try to read the material right then and there, so it's fresh in my mind, you know, because I feel like if I sit on it a few days, I start to ferment. I start to think of like questions that aren't going to be, you know, genuine, I guess. Like when I read it fresh and go for it, seems to be the best route for me.
See, so this is how George and I balance each other, right? So George usually does a lot of the research on the guests, right? And with me, I'm very organic. I form my questions based on what I'm hearing coming out the guest's mouth.
Yep.
So for me, it's very natural. It's like if the way I approach it is if we were at a bar and we're having a conversation and I hear something that I find interesting, I'm going to probe on that and I'm say, oh, let's talk about that. Well, what do you mean by that? You know, can you elaborate? And that's where the conversation grows. Where George will, you know, out of respect for the creator, will do some homework so he's prepared to be able to ask some fundamentals. So if you ever watch the show, George is leading the questions, and when you see me come in, it's because it's something that piqued my curiosity, and I felt like I didn't get enough detail on it, and I'm approaching it from the listener's point of view. Like if I didn't hear enough of what the person was saying, or if it wasn't clear enough, or if I'm interested, I'm assuming that the listeners as well. So I'm going to represent the listener, and I'm going to say, hey, can you elaborate on this? Or, you know what, you said this, you know, George asked you this question 5 minutes ago, you know, can you just elaborate on this subject? And that's how we balance each other. And that's how the conversation just flows.
And the callbacks help so much because it actually shows that you're paying attention to the interview, like being able to go back and bring it forth. Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you guys balance it out well. You know, doing a one-man team for me, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think in that same aspect, it's not, because like I have complete reins of it. Right. And as long as, as long as I'm ready to go, it's always a good time. So speaking of that though, let's have a good time and let's talk about your history as an indie comic creator. You said you created some children's books previously. What are those about? What struck your inspiration for that? Was it I know previously before the interview went live, we were talking about some of your more personal history. Do you think any of that had anything to do with creating the children's stories?
So you see this shell? There's a kid inside that's just been trying to break out forever. Yeah. So I've never grown up, right? And I'm always looking at things from the perspective of my inner child. And I've always been fascinated by Fraggle Rock. Anything Jim Henson I was in love with. The Never-Ending Story, Warriors of Virtue. You know, there's a lot of different things that influenced me as a kid. And then when Alf came out, it was like, forget it. I love Alf. And so I've always wanted to create from that perspective. And so I wanted to create these worlds. So when my niece, Amanda, she had this amazing imagination. So I created Mandy, Pandy, and the Curfew. And basically it was, you know, Mandy had a curfew and she chose to not comply with her curfew. And she walked into the living room and there was a scary movie on that she should not have been watching. And because of that, she started having nightmares, and she ended up in this castle with a witch and monsters and now her and her fuzzy slippers and her teddy bear have to escape the clutches of the witch in the castle. And when she wakes up, she realizes there's a reason why she's not allowed to watch these movies and why she has a curfew. And so there's a lesson there. There's another book called Scary, and it's about my other niece. And, you know, and basically rumors have it that these kids were disappearing in this neighborhood. And it was because of this young lady named Scary Airy. She was bullied in school. And so she was a witch. And so the kids were starting to disappear. But was it really her? Who was making the kids disappear? And so there's that story. Then there's The Adventures of Cosmic Gorf. And Gorf I created when I was a kid. And that was actually my first comic book, Cosmic Wars. And Cosmic
You
Gorf.
created that as a kid?
I created, yes, Cosmic Gorf as a kid, and I created a comic book that was my first comic book that I released back in 2005 was Cosmic Wars.
So cool. Yeah, that's so cool.
And when I first created Gorf, his name was Scrungy, and then eventually became Gorf. I was like, Scrungy's too corny for him, and so he evolved over the years. And then there's the oogly booglies, right? All those things that go bump in the night. All the things, you're scared for the lights to be off because you think there's something under the bed. You want that closet door closed because you don't want it cracked because you think someone's staring at you in the closet. So, and each one of those books was illustrated by a different artist. And then, so for me, I love telling the story from the kid's point of view, not necessarily from the adult's point of view.
So that is so cool that you're able to draw stuff from that, that you created as a child and create a book out of it. That has to be such an awesome feeling. Not only that, but having inspiration from both your nieces, do they know that these books were based off of them?
Yes.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So that one sounded pretty scary though, about the children going missing. How do you walk that fine line of making a children's book but keeping the suspense and sort of like the horror aspect to it?
Yes, Bill. It started because the girl was bullied in school. They pull on her pigtails. She get made fun of, and it happens around Halloween where the kids start vanishing. And so then you try to find out, is the story real or is fiction?
Okay.
Did the kids make it up? So you won't know until the end of the story whether or not it's real or not.
No, so that is so cool. That's awesome. So what made you make the transition from doing kids books to creating comics? Was this something you were doing in between with one another, or did you make that transition from one to the other?
No, I think I've always wanted just to create, and I wanted to do all of it. And comic books was the biggest influence for comic books is when I saw Too Close for Comfort. The father in the show, he was a comic strip artist who did a series called Cosmic Cow. And that's when I realized you could make a living as a comic strip illustrator. And I was like, Mom, that's what I want to do. I didn't know you can do that for a living. I never associated what I was reading with a creator. I just thought it just, magically happened. And so that was like, I was hooked. So it was always my goal to make my comics independently.
So you said you had another comic in between the children's books and There's an Alien in My Toilet, correct?
Yeah, no, my first book was Cosmic Wars.
Okay, that was your first book. Okay. My apologies on that. Yeah. So with There's an Alien in My Toilet, this was something that you created previously and came back to. So do you want to talk about your first, you had a couple books and a graphic novel, it seemed like, right?
Yeah, so There's an Alien in My Toilet. I created it in 2005 when an editor of a newspaper approached us and said, hey, if you had a comic strip, science-based, we'd be willing to publish it in the newspaper. So I was driving to the Lincoln Tunnel, and then bam, Doodie showed up in my brain, and he says, hi, I'm Doodie from Uranus. And I was like, oh. And so I met the guys at High Hop, and I was like, here it is. There's an alien in my toilet. His name is Doodie. He's from Uranus. And they looked at me like I was some sort of crazy man. And I started sketching out the character. And while there wasn't an attempt to do a comic strip, and we launched it at the MoCA, I realized I didn't want to do it as a strip, and I didn't want to give it to the papers. I wanted to control the destiny, and I wanted to make it a full-fledged comic book, and eventually into multimedia brand. I wanted a children's version of it. I want an animation, the whole bit. So we launched it, and then Discover. I don't know why they gave me such a high credit. They gave me a platinum card, and my wife, I don't know how she agreed to it, but I decided to go to the licensing expo.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a big expense, over 10 grand. And I don't know, and we're still married, so she obviously loves me. So so I put it as
you did something good to save that.
Yes, so I put everything on black. I charged the card. Went to the expo and got a lot of media attention. And that's how we got represented by Circle of Confusion, who represents the Wachowski brothers and Robert Kirkman, The Walking Dead. And because there were a lot of people coming at us, the companies coming at from all different directions. And so these guys said we can filter all of the manure from the real stuff. And basically we only take our percentage when we secure a deal. And I was like, okay. So that's how they started talking with Disney and Warner Brothers. And we were close. We were very, very close to securing a deal. Doodie appeared on news from Fox to NBC, on American Latino TV, the newspapers, a lot of radio stations. He was getting a lot of traction. And then the deals fell through. And I basically was bleeding us dry financially, and I couldn't sustain it anymore. And so when all of that happened, I just walked away from comics and podcasting. And
I would almost be like, your dream was like right there in your fingertips, and just to have it snatched away from you after you put your blood, sweat, tears, so much money into it. Coming back to that, like, how difficult was that? I mean, you probably had the passion just burning within you, but I mean, for me, at least, I would have that wavering feeling of like, what if this happens again? Like, right. How did you overcome that? It
was tough. Those 10 years were tough because, like the guys that I was doing comics with. They continued in comics, and they were doing shows. And I remember going to a show as a spectator, and I think maybe about 4 times in my lifetime I went as a spectator. Most of the time I was there as a publisher behind a table. And so I went as a spectator, and I felt like an outsider looking in, and I felt awkward. I was like, wow, this was the place that what I called home for so many years, and why does it feel foreign to me? So it was hard. I was always looking in the rearview mirror. I focused my career in corporate retail, and I excelled. Everything stabilized. We cleared our debt because I don't know what the hell possessed me back then, and we got a house, and everything just stabilized. And then I looked at my wife. I said, because I always had my office, and it was just a museum. It was just all my stuff. And I told my wife, I said, look, I don't want to sit on a porch in 20, 30 years looking and saying what would have happened if I would have seen it through. So she looked at me like Adrian looked at Rocky, and she said, go for it. And I was like,
that's so awesome.
And so George and I met up. I was like, yo, I'm bringing back the podcast. You want to come down? He said, absolutely. I made the announcement on Facebook that I was coming back to comics. Mark Torres from It Came From the Radio, shout out to you. He hit me up and he says, hey, you want to make that announcement on my show? I said, sure. I drove to Long Island to his radio station. I made the announcement on the radio, and I haven't looked back since.
Man, you guys, that's so awesome. Like seeing the fall, and then the comeback was just twice as hard. What are some of the things that you did differently this time around?
Well, this time around, when I made the decision I wanted to come back, I was studying what changed in the game. Because back then, we had the traditional mixer, we had big giant camcorders. Everything was different. And we didn't have all these streaming platforms. We didn't have open source platforms like OBS, all these things. So I had to study what happened. So I joined a lot of live streams with the guys who do it well. And I asked a lot of questions in the live chats, and I was just doing my research. Then I downloaded OBS and I studied that for a while. And then I already had the mic, so that wasn't a problem. I just needed to get webcams. And then I changed my old mixer, and I got the Rodecaster Pro. And I did that, and I was ready. Then I wanted my own intros and outros, so I started working on those, getting it all right, the branding right, everything there. And if you look at the first show in 2019 in September, when we first came back to the show now, very different as far as the look and feel of it. And but it required 6 months of just going back. I didn't just want to just come in and put on a camera and say, hey, I wanted to understand what I was getting myself into, how to communicate in this new space. That changed. I created, that's when I joined Tumblr, I joined Reddit, all these things. I created accounts on Instagram. So just to set the stage and get ready.
Yeah, I remember I used to be in another podcast called Talk Geekly, where I had a co-host, and we ran it for like 2 years, and we pretty much he'd cover 3 Marvel issues a week, I'd cover 3 DCs, and we'd do 3 different pieces of geek culture news. And eventually that broke apart, and this is how Keeping It Geekly formed. And I remember I didn't want to start right off the rip with nothing to show. I didn't want to have my production value not be good. I wanted something that I could be proud of, that I could share with my friends and stuff. And my biggest thing was I didn't have a microphone. I had like a crappy, it was some crappy generic microphone, and I had 10-foot ceiling. So every time I talked to someone, I sounded like I was talking in a pop can. And it was just such a miserable experience. So as soon as I got the microphone, I wanted to do interviews and stuff, and just hitting the ground running and trying to break into it. Breaking into the indie scene was it seemed like it was hard, but once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had that experience when you came back, when you finally started feeling like you were back at the table, sitting down with your friends and getting it going? How did the indie scene, take you back?
So the guys and girls who knew us, they embraced us from the get-go. But there's a huge population that who the hell are these jokers, right? And so you get sized up. It's like, it's like when you go to a new school, right? And everyone's sizing you up to see what you're all about. That's what it was. Oh, these guys in another podcast is a fly by night. They're going to be here today, gone tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. Then we realized, wait, hold on. They're still
Surprise!
Here. Hold on. What do you mean they celebrated 200 episodes? Wait, they just celebrated 300 episodes? oh damn, they're gonna celebrate 400 episodes. Wait, hold on, they're true independent. They're really for independence. You're not gonna have us, raving about Marvel and DC and the mainstream guys. We talk to the unsung heroes. That's the premise of our show. And so then that's when it just changed. And so then this big coalition of independent creators just embraced us, and the same way we've been embracing them from the get. So the love was one-sided. For the majority of people who didn't know us, they're like, what are their motives? What are they here for? And then they're like, oh wait, and then they have a great experience when they're on the show, right? Because we make you are the center of the universe for us when you're on our show. So we want to make sure that the audience gets to know you. While we know that you're creative and you have a great product, we really want them to know the person behind that product. So we try to make you feel special. So that way it narrows that division between the listener and you, and it creates this, this bond.
Yeah, when I first started doing this, you're 100% right. When I got into the scene, there were so many people sizing me up because my Twitter account for Keeping It Geekly had like 50 followers at the time. Like my other Twitter account has 3,000. You know what I mean? They didn't know that. So a lot of these people were like, "Yeah, I'll throw you this favor. You're small," and I'm like, "Thanks, appreciate it. All right, let's run it anyways." Right. So let's move past that. Let's start to dive into your current Kickstarter campaign. What's the inspiration behind Doodie? The inspiration behind Uranus, and why an alien in the toilet? What draws him to that toilet?
So the title is the punchline, which you won't learn until the last issue, which is issue 10. It's a miniseries.
Okay.
It eventually spins. At the end of that starts Doodie, which is his own series, and it goes on all sorts of different adventures. And in Doodie, the first issue, he comes back to Earth because he thinks Santa Claus is the leader of Earth, and he has to take him down. So, so the punchline is in issue 10. The story is really centered around Doodie and his journey in life, right? So, he's this egocentric, thinks he knows it all alien. His father happens to be the emperor. His guardian has to be the general of Uranus. And now he is selected for this secret mission to Earth to determine if we're a threat to his homeworld. At least that's what he thinks. It's really General Goatee trying to get Doodie off his hands because he's burdened with babysitting him, and he can be a little overbearing. So he's like, you know what? Send him to Earth. No harm could come from there.
What's the worst that could happen?
They chalk it up to weather balloons. Nothing's gonna go wrong, right? So he heads to Earth, and in his haste, he realizes midway there that he forgot to refuel, and now he crash lands. And so instead of admitting his defeat, his mistake, he chalks it up as part of his plan to distract Earth's defenses. And so now he has to survive Earth's simple creatures, from woodpeckers to wolves to bears, eventually getting into a house where there's a father and son, and there's a dog, a Chihuahua named Herman, who thinks Doodie is a talking jalapeno. And that's where the real adventure begins.
So what was the inspiration? It seems like Herman has, some more pronounced meaning behind it. Was Herman like anything like with a dog within your life or anything, or a dog you currently have?
So Herman, I'm a pet lover. I love animals. And Herman, so my mom had a boyfriend who had a strong Spanish accent. And so I used that with Herman and his dialect. And so it just became natural when so the way I create Doodie is very different from anything I've ever done. With Doodie, I draw it and then the dialogue comes. And where all my other books, I write out the scripts, the history timelines and everything, and then I illustrate. So, which is very different. So Herman was just organic in the story. And at that time, I did have a Chihuahua named Reina that I used as my prototype for it. But and then the talking jalapeno just came natural because, number one, I'm a goofball by nature. If you know anything about me, I'm going to say and do things that's going to make you uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, that came out. You ever watch some of the shows with George's reactions to what I do? It's just crazy. So it was just natural to have this Chihuahua and then you have this big green thing walking around the house. You think it's a jalapeno. And then, with his accent and Doodie's arrogance, they make such a great rival, like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and then it spins off from there.
So how does creating a comic, drawing it first, then writing the script, compare to your other creations? Do you find it easier to do it that way, or do you find it a little bit more challenging?
I attribute it to how Jay-Z goes into the booth to record his music, right? So the music's already there. He's sitting there, he's listening to it, and then he starts freestyling, and then he has a hit, right? That's how Doodie's created. Basically, I have a blank canvas. I start drawing, and then the lyrics come. So the drawing is the beat, is the music, and then the script is the lyric. The dialogue is the lyrics. So that's like Jay-Z freestyling. Okay. So it's just organic, and I only draw when Doodie pops in my head and he says, all right, it's time. And that's when I'm on the page and I'm doing another page. So it's a longer process because I have to be in that mindset where I feel like I'm connected. It's like this funnel. And then when I'm sitting there, it just flows. And I won't stop until he gives me the last frame. Yeah. You know, because it's already flowing. So I don't want to disrupt that process. And it's just been it's the most fun I've ever had working on any project in my life.
So you said you had 10 issues in the works with a mini-series for Doodie spinning off of that. Yeah. How far do you think this story is going to go for you? Do you think it's going to have, because from what I've seen, like design-wise, you have so many different characters in this Doodie universe, yeah. So much potential. How far do you think this is going to go in terms of just like books and stories?
As far as the fans will want it to be. So yeah. The way it's I created Doodie as a lifestyle brand. So there's a trading card game in development. So the Generation 1 cards are available on the campaign. And the game will come out next year. There's a guidebook to the characters, volume 1. So you'll get an insight of the characters that are coming down in future episodes and also what's coming in the card game. There's a coloring book. You know, there are 6-inch figures. There's a plus in the works. There's a whole lot of, so for me, Doodie's all encompassing. And my goal is, and that's why I have that, 50-second opening animated trailer. My goal is to get into a pitch room and sit down with the networks again and be able to say, here is the brand and all of its potential. And all I need them to say is, well, you covered everything. All we have to do is figure out how to market it. And then boom. So that's my goal. But until then, I'm trying to build an audience, a new audience around Doodie, because we had a loyal following back then. But, after 10 years, everybody moved on. So now it's trying to reintroduce Doodie to another. It's remastered, it's recolored, it's relettered, new variant covers. You have a cover by George. I have a cover by Masiek Emperor, who's an artist who actually did the interiors for the Adventures of Cosmic War for me. And then you have the homage cover to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I did, and I did the Matrix cover and the Rambo cover that I did. So there's a lot of options, and it all depends on the consumer, if they're willing to come on board and take a chance on an all ages comedy series that's not like anything else out there. It's not Marvelous, it's not superheroes. I'm not rebranding somebody else's character or taking a spin on somebody like a Sherlock Holmes. This is just a unique new project, and hopefully Doodie gets to pay it forward, because he's like the extension of his predecessors, the Alfs, Marvel, the Martians, Invader Zims. He's the next, the next generation of aliens to come.
So I really like how in-depth your campaign is too. I've looked at several, and just all the different tiers you have. One of the biggest things that really caught me off guard that I wasn't expecting is you have all sorts of like activities within these comics, like puzzles and multiple choices, which I thought was awesome. I have not seen that, and I thought that was such an awesome feature. What drove you to do that? Like, what type of inspiration? Because that's something that you could just distribute to all sorts of different things, like even classrooms. I seen you had a tier for classrooms as well, which was pretty cool.
Yes. So for me, George and I, back in the early Crazy Comics days, we used to teach at the Y, right? And we used to do speaking engagements at the Y and teach art. And for me, and then I went back on my own and continued teaching at the Y in the Bronx. But for me, the education is critical, and imagination. I think they go hand in hand. I think learning and imagination are one and the same, because the more you learn, the more you inquire, and the more you inquire, the more that your brain expands. With the question of what's possible, what's possible. And I think when you plant those seeds in the next generation, they're going to be the ones that's going to create that next best thing. They're the ones who are going to take us to that next level. And what a way to have fun with a comic book for the whole family. And not only that, now you have word puzzles. You know, who doesn't love word puzzles? You have a
Yeah.
maze, you have trivia questions, you have critical thinking questions, you have all this stuff that's going to tie you into the book and to the comic and influence that research, right? It forces you to, you know, there are multiple choice questions that's going to require you to pull out your calculator, go back and read the book, you know, all those things. And it's just create that engagement and hopefully embrace the whole lifestyle of duty. And if you wanted the answers for those questions in that first book, you have to pick up the second book.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you absolutely like nailed it too. I was checking them out, and they look really in depth. Was it hard to design that, like to come up with those questions and like design the mazes and everything?
Yeah, I spent a few days figuring out the flow of it, right?
Yeah.
So what so the questions are centered around the planets and the story, right? It's like the distance between Uranus and Earth and all this other stuff, and you know, so you know, Doodie needs a certain amount of uranium chips to be able to fuel his ship. So how many times does he have to refuel with that distance, all that stuff? So everything's tied to really bring them into the Doodie universe, but also expand their mind. So yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to tie it all in. You know, whether or not do I put a answer key at the back of the book, and I was like, no, you know what, I'm gonna put it on the follow-up issue, so this way it brings them back to that next one and say,
yeah.
let me check to see if I was right.
Mhm.
'Cause you can Google, but you always have that doubt. Oh man, but you know, uranium, did I get the math right? You know, and then you go to that second one, and hopefully to bring them in.
Yeah, I like that callback too, because it's a nice little way to get them to want to get that next issue when they're already like right there on the edge.
Yes.
So speaking of that, let's go ahead. Do you want to go ahead and check out and break down your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before I go into the tiers, I just want to show that I'm a big fan of Alf, and Alf have ran for 102 episodes. So in honor of that, if we get to 102 backers, everybody will get a mini print of this right here. That's a pinup that I did. It's Doodie, you know, basically with all of the key sci-fi aliens in the background. So everyone will get a copy of that. Digital backers will get a digital version, and physical backers will get a physical print
That is
of
so awesome,
of
dude.
that pinup as well. And also, I was on a show, Russell Allen and Pops Van Zant on CromCon, and
Yeah.
they introduced me to comic books for kids. And so I went on to Comic Books for Kids website. I donated to their cause, and then Pop's like, "Do you have a tier?" And I was like, "I didn't even think about it." So I added a tier. Basically, if you may not want to invest in an all ages book because it's not your cup of tea, but you may want to support kids who are, you know, suffering with cancer and that are in the hospitals, and you can do a tier for $40, and that's the shipping included. 5 books will be donated to that organization. I will add a 6th book for every 5 books that are ordered. I will add a 6th
so
book.
awesome.
And that's $40 for 6 books. That would have been a $65 tier. It's $40, and that includes shipping, so you're not going to the shipping page. If you already you've already ordered, made a pledge, and you can add on 1 book for $8, and that'll go directly to, you have to add on that tier that says Comic Book for Kids. And so every book that's ordered, at the end of it, I will just have it shipped directly from the printer to them. So based on that order. So for every 5, I will add an extra one. So you can add it as an add-on or a tier itself. And I just want to make everybody aware of that because it is new. And again, I want to shout out Pops Van Zant and Russell from Russell Explode, because they're the ones who brought me onto it.
So real quick though, I remember you saying you worked with kids in the Bronx at the Y.
Yes.
This has to be such an awesome tier to be able to give back to children who
Yes.
are, you know, in the hospital with nothing really able to do, to get some comic books in their hands and give them that, you know, that quality of life.
Yes, my brother was born with a defective liver. He spent most of his life in the hospital, and that's why I would visit him. And that's he was also one of the influences behind me wanting to be an illustrator, because he illustrated 3 Monkeys in a Barrel, and I was fascinated by, number one, his positive nature, considering what he was dealing with, and the fact, and then that he was talented, and so, and I think that was the influence behind some of the things that we did for children. And then when this came up, I was like, you know, George and I looked at each other like, that's a no-brainer. That's a
Yeah.
no-brainer. It just seems like it should have happened a long time ago. And so again, much props to the guys, Russell and Pops. So yeah, this is a great opportunity for kids in the hospital. Not only that, they're gonna get a fun, all ages, a safe for kids comic book plus activities. So they get to tear it up and draw in it, write in it and have fun with it. And that's pretty awesome. So again, you might not be interested in an all ages book, but you can do something.
They definitely will be.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. Absolutely. And then, one of the newest things I added was the Monster sticker bundle. So this one, you can get the Monster pack of stickers, which is Doodie as Dracula, as Cthulhu, the Mummy, and Franken Doodie. And you get the comic book and the trading card. So that was newly added a few days ago. And then there's the variant covers. So you can't have First Flush without a variant to Rambo First Blood. So that's why I did that Rambo cover, right? I'm a big Matrix fan, so that's why I did that.
So what was your thoughts on Resurrections? Did you like it, or was it not your cup of tea?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, all right.
I haven't gotten it yet. Yes, I haven't gotten it yet. I've been watching I've been watching the Witcher series, and I'm watching right now Pennyworth. So I haven't gotten there yet, and I finished watching the Book of Boba Fett. But so that cover A was done by George Medina. George doesn't draw anymore, right? George gave up drawing years ago, and so this is a one-time only. You'll be able to get a George Medina cover, which is dope. Then Marcia Campo did the Alien and the Ship cover. And then I got the homage to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 30. I love the Turtles, and so I loved that scene. I thought it was brilliant to put Doodie in that scene with the ship in the background, writing his journal, basically saying, "Hey, Dad, everything's good. Plan is all good." Lying, right? He's like, "Oops, I don't know how I'm gonna get back. The ship is wrecked." So
I'll come up with it on the fly.
Yeah. So I just thought it was brilliant. Just a white background. And then you can get a sketch cover with a commission sketch by me, or you can get it plain and draw on it yourself. And here are 4 sample pages of it, and you can see just how where he overcompensates. The moment of truth. Years of vigorous training and extreme preparation has led me to this point. I was handpicked by the top brass. The best of the best is what they say. It's really what Doodie says, right? And now I'm on a solo mission to determine the likelihood of this insignificant planet being a potential threat. Right?
Yeah, I love how he just downplays humanity so hard.
Right? So you get an insight into his persona. 2 years later, it's like a funny thing happened to me on my way to invading Earth. I was on this recon mission, which, if you ask me, was a waste of time. And then that's when he realizes he forgot to refuel. He's like, "Wait, don't tell me I forgot to refuel," right? So, okay, this here, it don't count. So he chalks it off. He crash lands. So here's the activity I was telling about. So every issue has 4 pages of fun activities. You got puzzles, trivia. It's fantastic for the whole family to enjoy. There's an educator's bundle. I've got over a dozen reviews from Newsarama, from the papers, from the radio stations, Wizard Magazine, Licensing Internationals. And then there's all the different forms of Doodie.
Yeah, the universe, man.
Yes.
I love it so much because they're all so detailed.
Thank you. Yeah, so Doodie has an active imagination. So what happens is he tends to fall asleep when he gets knocked out of a tree, he hits his head, he's knocked out. In his dream state, he becomes this larger than life figure where he takes on his adversary, the one that made him fall asleep. And he becomes a samurai, and his adversary is a ninja. He becomes a sheriff, and his adversary, whatever it is, he beats them in the dream, but in reality, the opposite's happening. So that's how he justifies who he believes he is through his dream state, because the whole time he is just trying to survive. And without that balance of imagination, he won't be able to. So those are the kids' books that I was talking about that I did. Cosmic Gorf was illustrated by Marcia Kempro. Mandy Pandy the Curfew by Hector Rodriguez, a fantastic artist. Scary Airy was illustrated by Big Cat Studios in the Philippines. And Oodly Boodly was done by David Keeley, is a friend of mine, talented artist. And then you also get a bonus copy of Rush 5377, created by George and illustrated by a team in the Philippines as well. And then you have all the tiers. So you have the digital copy at $5, you have the physical, the different covers, and then there's an indie creator or podcasters bundle, so you can get a copy of the book and the trading cards, and get a month of free press on Catch the Craze podcast, where we play a 30-second commercial of your show once a week on our show. So you get the best of both worlds. You get a great, funny book, and you get to promote yourself at the same time. And then there's the Comics for Kids bundle. So for every 5 books, I will send a 6th. And then there's the sketch cover. You have different combinations. There's a guidebook, and you can have the guidebook plain, or you can have it with a sketch on the back of the cover. The Educators bundle. So basically, there's a digital version and there's a physical. So a physical is, the school can order 25 copies, and they'll get a pinup that says "I love learning," or you get a digital where they get a digital license for a classroom per classroom. And they'll get a physical copy of the book for the teacher and the poster for the classroom as well. And then you have the Super Doodie bundle, where you can get all this crazy stuff right here. So the Super Doodie bundle gets you all the covers, plus the sketchbook with the commission sketch cover, plus the coloring book, the guidebook, the trading cards, a button, and 2 stickers. Or you get the Emperor's bundle, with if you're balling, you get the Emperor's bundle, and this
Dude,
comes
a lot in there though.
Yes, you get all of that, plus you get all 3 issues of Catch the Crazies, which is the book that's loosely based on George and I's experience in podcasting and comics with a supernatural twist. And you get the Volume 1 graphic novel of Forbidden, which I did, and the interiors were illustrated by Anibala Arroyo and Prime Santra. And you get stickers and trading cards. There's a whole lot of stuff in there with that commissioned sketch cover. You can get the original 11x17 of the guidebook cover art by me, plus the comics and stuff. And then there's the Retailers bundle, 5 copies for your store, or you can get 5 copies of each cover plus a commissioned sketch cover for your store. And then there's the 6-inch Doodie figure. So if we get to 150 backers, one backer, and I'll show you, that is going to get one of these figures custom painted.
How many are you at right now?
We're at 70, and we got 5
70?
days to go. Yes, but we also have 88 people still watching.
Well, they also say, I've also heard that the last week is the first and the last week is when you get the most hype. That's what I've heard before. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah. So that 6-inch figure, I'll show it to you when we remove that screen. Custom painted, one person, I will raffle it off live, and one person will walk away with a custom Doodie 6-inch figure.
That's so cool.
And then there's the plush. There's the prototype latex. These are all.
So how hard was it getting the plush made, and the latex as well?
The latex I did back in 2005. The plush was more recently. They're really. I'm creating them. I only did 2 of these plushes. They're 19 inches. They're pretty big.
So these are some gems. These are one of a kinds.
Yes, because I'm producing them to pitch, as part of my presentation. To show what the project will look like. But so I offered 1. So these are, that's 1 of 2. And the other one I'm keeping because I'm using it to pitch. The latex is 1 of 7. Those are prototypes. Or you can get a custom wall art by me, 8x8 wood or 8x10 canvas of Doodie. And then there's stretch goals. That card was done by fantastic artist Daphne Lage of the Samurai Doodie. And the other card was done by fantastic with a sports card illustrator, Brian Kong. He does trading cards for Marvel, DC, the big networks, the football. There's all that stuff.
I love it. I love it so much. Dude, that's so awesome.
Yeah, so you got a sticker stretch goal, and then you have so many add-ons. You got buttons, you got stickers, you got No Boo For You, which is an organization in the series. Catching Ghosts is what we do. That you'll find out what their role is in Disneyland My Toilet. You can add on.
I wish I would have scrolled down. I didn't see the stickers. I would have got some. I'm gonna have to come back to it.
Yeah, so the stickers are awesome. You have the I Love Learning pinup. You have the bookmark. You have the monster sticker set add-on. You can add that on. You got the add-on Doodie, another Doodie sticker set there. You got the add-on sticker on the tree stump. You can add on the trading cards. You can add on all the covers, and here again, you can add on just one single comic that'll go to the kids, or you can add on the 5, and then you have the guidebooks. All of these are add-ons, and you have the shirt as well, Doodie on the tree stump. and then see, there it is, the add-on. You can do that, and then there's the sketch cover with a sketch by me, and then there's the squad. There's Sam and George. I try to create like a GI Joe, file card, and then this is just like some from the early days of.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So how complex was running a card game? Like, that sounds insane.
It is. It's still in development. That's how it is. I'm still working on it. Yeah, I'm still working on it.
He's like,
that's why it's coming out next year. So every campaign, there's going to be 10 campaigns for this series. Every campaign is going to have another volume of cards for the gameplay. So when There's an Alien in My Toilet comes to a close on Kickstarter, the 11th campaign will be for the board game, the tabletop board game with the rule book. So.
Okay.
So right now you're gonna get all the play cards in advance, so you can get ahead of the curve and start understanding. And in the guidebook, each guidebook is gonna have a different volume because there's a lot of characters in the world. So you'll get a head start. So when it launches, and we launch the Kickstarter campaign next year, that then you'll get an opportunity to have it and start playing. So I'm still working on it. I'm still working on the rules. It's an undertaking.
Yeah, that's a pretty brilliant setup too. Having each campaign giving you a set of cards, then dropping the game itself at the end. I think that's like perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead. We'll switch back to the regular screens.
Yeah.
All
So
right, we are back.
This is the figure I was talking about. So I'm still doing the details on it.
So how hard was it to get that paint to stay on a 3D print?
So when you first get it, it looks like it's a glow in the dark green. But you got to add a layer. You have to add a primer first. So this is one prime that I'm getting ready to paint. So it's completely white. So you prime it first, and then you use acrylic paint to paint it. So this is the first coat I'm going to do the second coat and all the detail work. So this is the first coating of it. But one lucky person is going to get this custom painted by me. So it took me 3 hours just to get to this. And it'll take me another 3 hours to do the second coat.
I do a lot of 3D printing, and I asked because I'm not good at the painting. That's the part I'm like, I'm not gonna paint it.
This is my first time painting, so I took my time. I bought a whole different set of brushes, thin brushes, wide brushes, and so I was like, and you make mistakes along the way, but the good thing is paint. You can paint right over it.
Did you 3D print it yourself?
No. I outsourced to a company.
Okay, I gotcha.
China.
Yeah, no, that actually, it turned out cool. The paint is sticking well too. But for me, it always would just bleed through, and then sometimes some of my prints would have like a little bit of a line, so it would like bleed through the line and just ruin it. So we broke down the campaign. We broke down, your ins and outs. What would you say some of the biggest do's and don'ts are with running a Kickstarter and promoting your indie comic and just what you do in general?
I think the don't is don't launch without at least minimum 6 weeks promotion before you launch. So have a landing page first for at least 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months, so that way you can communicate it out and get the word out and get people to sign up and get some excitement around it. I think a lot of independents, they just they say, there's a I can do Kickstarter, and then they go run it and they don't attract anybody because they never promote it. No one knows what it is. And then they realize, oh man, I'm not in the end of the campaign. I didn't even come close to my goal.
You could literally have the best product around, but if no one knows about it.
Yes. So I think that's number one. Number two, don't start a Kickstarter if you're not finished with the project. This project is ready to go. And so all that happens is that it ends on the 8th. That means on the 23rd, the money's in my account. That means that's the day that it goes to the printers. And then from whatever time it takes the printers to get it back to me, within 48 hours of it reaching me, it's out the door to you. So I'm not waiting for an artist because I'm the artist. I'm not waiting for anybody. It's done. It's ready to go. So I think I'm still waiting on campaigns for over a year that should have been back to me last year, April. So I think that's the worst thing you can do for yourself and for the independent community because it gives us a bad rap. So I said, make sure your project's ready to go, and talk to others. I think you need to go and look at who does it well, get some advice. And I think the do's, number one, have fun with it. make sure that your page is clean, concise. It's easy to understand, um, um, and be realistic with your goals. I've seen people no one knew who they were. They came out of nowhere. Next thing you know, they got a $10,000 goal, and they make $300. So I'm like, that's I do an average. If it's just what I take the printing costs, the manufacturing costs, and the shipping costs, and the supply costs, and I incorporate all that together. And I said, on average, if I had to produce this, what would it cost? What would I need? And that's what I put as the goal. There's no revenue coming to me. It's all for shipping, processing, printing, all that stuff, and it goes right out the door. So just be honest with you, be realistic with your goals. Before we launched our first Kickstarter, we talked to the people who did it right. There's a creator called JD Calderon who has Oswald Chronicles. He's like a Kickstarter connoisseur. So we did 3 episodes with him, just educating on what to do before, during, and after a campaign.
Oh, dude, that was so awesome because it kind of set you guys up to do it right. Yeah, what a perfect setup, dude.
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough that every Kickstarter that we launched, we actually were funded. The goal is to now bring in more backers, because I think this is the most backers so far. I think, the Catch the Crazies was the highest, I think, at 52 backers. So right now this is at 70, and there's still 88 people watching the campaign. So I'm very hopeful that they all come on. And that's why I threw in that incentive. If we get to 102 backers, you'll get that pin up. If we get to 150 backers, somebody's going to get that figure, just to excite people. Because I really just want the readers. I'm not paying anybody. The artist was me. I don't have to pay me. So it's really just I'm trying to get the readership.
So, we did an awesome job wrapping up anything and everything in terms of this. Is there any last thing you would want to say to the viewers about there's an alien in my toilet?
Yeah, I think, remember that time when you were a kid and you're trying to find your place in the world, right? And you just want to impress the adults and you just keep stumbling, and that awkward feeling? Well, that's Doodie. He's that kid, and along the way he makes a lot of mistakes, but you can't help but fall in love with him because of how he deals with it. And it's take a chance. Even you bodybuilders that are currently curling right now at Gold's Gym, take a chance. You're not too cool for Doodie. You will laugh, you will enjoy it, you will chuckle. Your girlfriend's gonna say, "What are you laughing at?" And then when she sees what it is, she's like, "Oh," she's gonna give you a hug, right? Take a chance. And even if you don't want it for yourself, get it for your niece, your nephew, or support. Get it, and let's get it to the hands of the kids with the comic book kids, comic book kids, comic books for kids organization. And either way, this is a great opportunity to have fun, be a kid again, explore, and and take on the next generation of aliens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited too. I just backed. I thought I was backing it previously, but I went to double check and I had to get my issues secured. We came to my favorite part of the episode. I always love this part the most. I always want to take an opportunity to ask someone who's doing it to give their piece of advice to anyone out there who is struggling to get their comic off or get their idea to paper. What piece of advice would you give them to help them just push through?
Why are you doing it? I think the biggest thing is the question is, why are you doing it? If you can answer your why, then you'll understand what you need to do next. Because your purpose is the most important part of it. And then the list, what are you willing to do? What you're not willing to do? If you have too many things on that left column, then I won't even bother. But if you're doing it for all the right reasons, because you're creating for self, finish it. The best thing you can do for yourself, for your state of mind, is to finish the project. Then you can start communicating that you have a finished product. But the worst thing is communicating something that you never get around to finishing because you didn't understand your why, and you had too many things on the left-hand side that you're not willing to do. Oh, I'm not willing to give up my gaming. Oh, I'm not willing to give up hanging out with the guys. Oh, I'm not willing to do this. But creating a piece of work requires a lot of time, sacrifice, and commitment. And I think that's the biggest thing. Understand your why. Make the time. If you're going to do it, make that time. If it's 1 hour a day, 6 hours a week, whatever it is, but make sure that's uninterrupted time that you focus on it and finish it and then worry about communicating after it's done.
Yeah, definitely take that passion, explode it as hot as it's going to get, and just run with it. And yeah. I could stand here and testify. Sam's been out there just pushing it as hard as anyone. Like, it inspired me to want to up my game in terms of promotion, because I'm like, dude, if I'm going to be interviewing this guy, I gotta be going just as hard as him. But with that being said, guys, this does wrap up today's episode. Big shout out to Samuel Vera for keeping it geekly with us about his newest Kickstarter campaign, There's an Alien in My Toilet. I really appreciate having you on. And with that being said, guys, we hope you keep it geekly.